Hello, 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 and welcome to a brand new episode of Three Drams. As always, I am your host, Potstill Matt, also known as Matt Healy, and I am delighted to be welcoming you guys to episode 45 for the 25th of July, 2024. I am thrilled to once again have a fantastic lineup of Irish whiskies this week. We have, of course, three very different and very interesting whiskies coming to you from Hyde, Shortcross, and Blackwater Irish whiskies. And this is going to be, I think, an absolutely very interesting and great roundup of whiskies from across the island. As you may be familiar with Three Drams, usually I have my lovely Irish whiskey backdrop, but today I am traveling in the US of A, selling and spreading the good word of Irish whiskey around for the American audience, so you can deal with my lovely little taupe blue background for the evening that's in it. As always, a great big hello to all of you guys watching live. I see Marissa coming in from Cork. We have our friends in the walking club in Shneem. Martin is you're in the Algarve with kit in hand. That is dedication, Martin. I am glad to see that the samples went with you all the way to the Algarve. And of course, all of our friends in Germany. It is always great to have you on the show. Remember, guys, when you are watching along with us, it is always fantastic to be able to ask the flavor makers and creators that are sitting in front of you the questions that you are wondering. This is the place where you get to be able to ask them the queries and thoughts and comments you've always had about Irish whiskies. And then, of course, as we're tasting them, it is the opportunity to taste along with us and give us your thoughts on the whiskies as you taste it with us. To those who are watching back after the fact, I know there's quite a large contingent of you guys. As always, we do have our friends in Brazil, Canada, Japan, and in Australia, who, of course, this is odd time zones to be watching live. So very big hello to you guys as well. It's great to see always the comments and the thoughts that you guys have after the shows. So it's great to have you guys there as well. Marissa's asking me, where in your home country am I? So I'm assuming if your home country, Marissa, is the United States, because I actually don't know whereabouts you're from. I am in the lovely and very sunny New Jersey right now. And I just came from San Francisco this morning. So I am jet lagged 3 different ways, from Ireland to San Francisco, and then changing throughout the night from San Francisco to New Jersey. So I'm going to have a lot of fun with this. Some fantastic Irish whiskies are exactly what we need to have a little pick-me-up. But as I always say, you guys are not here to listen to me badger on. It is time to bring in some of our first guests. But before I do want to say a very big thank you to the guys in Irish Malt who put this together. And of course, the masterminds behind Three Drams. As always, I'm just the pretty face that shows up once a month and gets to talk to you guys about Irish whiskey. The team in Three Drams and Irish Malt are the ones who put together all the work, sourcing the whiskies, decanting and shipping them all across the world. So very big thank you to them. But without further ado, time to bring in Dram 1. This is Hyde's number 10 Calvados cask, and from Hyde Whiskey, we have their business manager, Glen, joining us. Glen, welcome. How are you doing?
Matt, how are you getting on? And before we say anything, thanks to the guys in Three Drams as well. They do a fantastic job. Just want to get that out there straight off.
well, a good way to start the show, Glen. You'll have kept the hive mind happy. So this is Dram 1. This is the, I forget where the camera is here. The 10-year-old Calvados cask finish single malt. While I'm going to pour this into the glass, we can have a little nose while we're chatting. But while we do that, why don't you tell us a little bit about who you are and what you do with Hyde, and then let's get straight into the whiskies.
100%, Matt. The first thing I'll say is we're whiskey bonders. We've got a lot of different products, a lot of different expressions. So we number them. We go from 1 to, I think it goes up to 12 now, and then we've got other ones as well. So it can be very easy to confuse number 10 with 10-year-old. It's not 10-year-old. I want to go straight off the bat. But yeah, 100%. We have our number 10 here. We've just released it. It's our Calvados cask finish. But as I say, not 10-year-old. So we're non-age statement. We're whiskey bonders. I don't know, a lot of our viewers are probably familiar with what whiskey bonding is, but for people who aren't, simplify it right down. Whiskey is literally just raw, clear, 95% alcohol goes into the barrel, whiskey comes out. So instead of producing alcohol and being a distillery, we're a 10-generational family business of focusing on the barrel, focusing on the wood. That's all Hyde Whiskey is. So it's just all about the wood, and that's what we do. That allows us to have all these different whiskies, and that's why we're able to bring out so many, including this number 10. I don't know if you can see. It's best served in a Hyde branded glass, by the way. If anyone's watching, you need to get these as well. But yeah, lovely. I think it's a 6-year-old. I think it is a 6-year-old single malt finished in a Calvados Garnier, I think it's called. A Calvados cask, which is a nice apple pear brandy from Normandy in northern France.
Fantastic. Yeah. So coming in at 46%, you say you've just released this. Is this the newest product from the range?
It's not the newest, but it's one of the ones we've just released in the last. I think it's 3 months old now. So it's just gotten out there into the market now. I think you said we have a lot of viewers from Germany, so it should be out there in the market in the specialized off licenses. That's the only place we go to. We don't go to any big multiples or anything like that. We try and keep it nice and high class and premium. But yeah, I think it's 3 months old now on the market, so it should be out there. We've released a couple since. We're very busy. We're very busy whiskey bonders.
Absolutely. I know that you guys have lots of expressions, but also to be found in a lot of places around the world, which is always great to see. The selections spread. Why don't you tell us a little bit about the whiskey? Why don't you bring us through it? Yes. 46% single malt, approximately 6 years old, finished in Calvados casks.
Yeah, so we tried to try and marry a single malt and a little bit of that spicy punch that you get with the malt with something a little bit smoother and a little bit fresher, a little bit of citrus. So you get that on the nose immediately when you smell it. So I get a lot of citrus, a lot of apple, which is that's what the notes say. Like it's dominated by it, and it really doesn't lie. You might get a little bit of nutty notes, a little bit of almond, which is generally what goes with it as well. So you get a lovely nose on it, but you're not getting away from that single malt spice and that goodness, you know.
Absolutely, I will say my glass selection is definitely limited while traveling, so. The tumbler is what I'm going to have to make do with this evening. So I'm going to say Slánta. I'm going to have a little sip of it here.
Myself too. And what I meant to ask you, Matt, what did you think of the nose straight off? Even in the tumbler, like which isn't the best for the nose.
For the tumbler, it's actually, I don't know if you noticed at the very beginning, I poured it into the tumbler and then I went back to the bottle to get a little bit more of a nose. It's definitely very malty, and you're back to that nut almond is at least in the tumbler is definitely one of the more prominent flavors. That little tongue prickle as well, bringing out that little bit of spice on the palate. It's making for a nice medium finish. And Marissa is saying she can taste the apples from the Calvados, so it's good to see that cask influence on it as well. Do you know how long it was finished in Calvados casks for?
6 months. So just 6 months is all we generally do, and that's all you really need. They're the most crucial months of it, you know.
Whiskey Cap saying that it's malty and almonds is bang on what he's tasting as well.
Great. And Marissa as well. I think you said you were in Cork. If you could shout out where you are in Cork as well, because that's where we are. We're a 10-generational family-owned business from West Cork, so we're embedded in that part of the world. So it'd be great to hear where you are as well, Marissa. Shout out to Marissa, I suppose.
So when you're, for a 10-generation family company, then now looking at whiskies, I suppose, what is the company's vision on the whiskies that it releases? How do they select what whiskies do you want to be bonding? How do you just select which ones you want to bottle and sell, I suppose?
Yeah. Well, it's really up to a couple of things. One of them is the market, so where we're going and what people want. A lot of our whiskies, the whiskey that this number 10 has replaced, we had another number 10 Banyuls cask that was selected and bottled just exclusively for France. So a lot of it can be the market and what the market is wanting, depending on where we go. And we're in 65 countries around the world, so that's really a big factor on what we select. Another is our main man is Conor Hyde. So Hyde Irish Whiskey, family-owned business. He's a 10th generational whiskey bonder, so he absolutely calls the shots there. And to be honest, he loves a single malt paired with something fruity, as we all do. But that's what he always says is you need some kind of balance. And like as you say with the taste on this, it's a little bit like watermelon, like peach, like a little bit of fruity, citrusy. The nose is dominated by citrus as well. just a great marriage. So it's kind of like it's a marriage of what Connor likes and what people like as well. And because we've got that whiskey bonder knowledge and our business model, that we're not tied up in a distillery. We can cherry pick whatever we want to do. So we're basically playing, if you will.
And you said you're in 65 countries. Do all of the releases go to all of the countries, or do you do a lot of those specialty like your Banyuls in France only?
Yeah, it depends on the countries. You know, a lot of the world now, especially as far east that you go, very much into malts, or at least that's what I'm finding now, is they will take maybe 4 or 5 different whiskies. They love malt out there. Wherever it is, they might love malt. You know, so it depends on what they want as well. Like we're happy to put it wherever people want it. You know, like I know you said, where did you say? You said you have viewers from Germany. Did you say Brazil as well?
We've people in Brazil, Canada, Australia, and Japan. Yeah, they're the ones that watch back more so after the fact. Yeah,
100%. We're on shelf in all of those, but in varying combinations. It depends on, they won't let us put, even in Ireland, in our home country, they won't let us put 15 bottles on the shelf. So we have to kind of cherry pick what we think is best for the market and what the market might like, you know. So in Ireland, in our home country, we've only 4 on shelf, and then we've another 2 that go into bars. But that's all they let us. We just cherry pick the best ones.
Absolutely. So what ones are you going to find in Ireland then from the Hyde range?
100%. So Ireland, as you know, it's got a rich plethora of Irish whiskey brands. So we try and just keep it nice and neat and nice and succinct in Ireland. So everything's kind of accessible. We have our number 6, which is an 18-year malt and an 8-year grain blended, finished in a sherry cask. That's our main front run. That's our black number 6. We've got a similar 6-year-old blend in a stout cask. That's our number 8 is on shelf as well. And then we've got a single grain in a bourbon cask as well. And then the last one kind of mixes and matches depending on the shop, as we say. So it's kind of, I hate to give you wishy-washy answers, Matt, but it really is. It's just the way it is, you know.
It's pretty concrete answers.
I'm trying to be honest here, you know. I'm trying to do my best.
Of course. And for those bottles that are on the shelves in Ireland, are they core range bottles or are they limited edition? Like, do they rotate out, or are they found year round?
They're found year round so far, but as whiskey is based on the barrel and based on the cask and the finish, they will run out and they are limited edition. So after a while, we will run out of one, just like the number 10 that we just went through. So I mentioned we had a Banyuls cask earlier. A Banyuls cask finished number 10, which was a single malt, a similar whiskey. When that runs out and when the means of production stop, we have to replace it. So they all are by definition and by very nature, they're all limited edition. So I have a Banyuls cask on the shelf somewhere over there, and it's never getting opened because they're not going to be made by us again, you know.
Absolutely. Is there anything in the warehouse that you've tasted yourself that you hope gets released in the future?
I can't be telling you all about the warehouse now, man. But
that's fair.
There is a few things now. In the range of above 10 years anyway. I'll tell you that much. Above 10 years and something up to 20-year-old as well. That's going to be fantastic. It's going to be fantastic when it hits it. There's some very expensive barrels, let me put it that way, in the warehouse.
Well, that is always good to hear. So if people are out there looking for Hyde number 10 in your lovely Calvados cask, what is the RRP and where should people be looking to find a bottle of it?
100%. So the RRP of the Calvados cask, we try and pass on our savings from our business model to the consumer. So it's very accessible in €49.99 euros, which is decent for a premium whiskey of its stature, I think, anyway. And in Ireland, it's obviously on Irish malts, and it's for that good price of €49.99. And I think one of the only other places you can get it up in Dublin in the Celtic Whiskey Shop. And it's at any of the shows. We travel around and we do trade shows and we do garden shows, and we'll bring select bottles such as Calvados. We generally will have Calvados that we bring around as well, but you won't find it in the likes of Super Value or Tesco or your big multiples. You know, we try and keep it very premium.
Okay. I know there's Tina dropping in there from Germany saying that your Hyde is very well known in Germany and you can find a lot of bottles at the whiskey fairs. So exactly what you're just saying
Exactly.
about those. So it is good to see. Is there anything that you haven't mentioned that you'd like to tell the people about Hyde or about this expression before we say goodbye to you?
But about this expression, I really hope you enjoyed it, guys. I'm as you can see, I'm quite young to be whiskey tasting and doing tastings, and it's one of my favorites. It's one of my most accessible. It's smooth, yet it's balanced. It's got malt, it's got punch, but it's got the nice fruity notes in it as well. So I love this whiskey. In terms of Hyde Irish whiskey, get out there and find it, guys. And if it's not somewhere you want it to be, go and ask. That's what we always say. You're almost doing my job for me, but we try and have it just where you need it. That's what we're trying to do. We're trying to have it not everywhere, not in your face. Just keep it nice and premium, and it's for our loyal customers and our loyal consumers, like the good people watching this show.
Well, absolutely fantastic, Glenn. Thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it, and thank you for introducing us to the Hyde Number 10 Calvados cask.
Perfect. Thanks so much, Matt. Thanks.
Thank you. Well, I am delighted to have, that is our first whiskey of the evening. That was the Calvados cask. And now I am delighted to introduce Dram though from Shortcross Irish whiskey. And I am delighted to be welcoming David Boyd Armstrong, co-founder of the distillery and the whiskey brands, to the show. Welcome, David. How are you doing?
Hey, Matt. Great to be here, and great to be online with everyone.
Absolutely. You seem like you've got a big glare of evening sun sitting beside you.
I am trying to find a way of getting it out of the way.
Must be good weather up by you.
Yeah, we've had 4 seasons in a day here. It's been everything from hailstones and rain earlier, and it's finally deciding to brighten up now.
Well, I'm delighted to hear. At least you'll have an evening to enjoy. So I said, this is Dram though. This is what we're going to be tasting this evening. This is your 7-year-old peated single malt in Cognac and Orange Liqueur cask. So I'm going to pour it into the glass here. And why don't you tell us a little bit about the distillery, and then why don't we get into the whiskey after that?
Yeah, sure. Well, look, everyone, my name is David Boyd Armstrong. I'm the co-founder and head distiller here at Rademon Estate Distillery in County Down. My wife Fiona and I founded the distillery back in 2012. We've been distilling gin since 2014 on the market, and producing and laying down Irish whiskey since 2015. So 9 years now, which is kind of frightening in a lot of ways. We are a small whiskey distillery. We produce between 200 and 300 barrels every year. Primarily, we are a single malt distillery, but we tend to produce a lot of really interesting things. And back in late 15, very early 2016, we went down the rabbit hole of wanting to produce peated single malt, because that's how I got into Irish whiskey, which was with a tasting of the original Connemara Turf Moor expression. And everyone told us at the time, you were crazy, no one wants smoky Irish whiskey. Only for now, 7, 8, 9 years later, it's probably one of the hottest sectors of Irish whiskey. So
absolutely.
Yeah. So at our distillery, we produce malt, peanut malt, a small amount of pot still. We produce a rye whiskey as well.
Well, I mean, all thoroughly exciting categories of Irish whiskey. Before jumping back in to ask you questions like that, why don't you tell us a little bit about this whiskey, and we can get a first sip on as well.
Okay, so this whiskey itself, this was laid down back in March of 2016. It represents our first barrels, our first production run of peated malt. And at the time, we were looking to use barrels that weren't bourbon or sherry, something that was really unusual, something really different. And anyone that knows us knows we experiment quite a bit with virgin oak, be it Quercus alba, Chinkapin, Quercus robur. But we came across these casks that sounded really interesting. And I suppose we approached some of our whiskies and other spirits with a concept in mind. And when we saw these particular casks, we just had this light bulb moment. Could we create a smoky chocolate orange tasting whiskey? And we knew the malt would give us that sort of sweetness and honey chocolate notes and the smokiness. And then it was when we saw these barrels that were just these orange and cognac liqueur. They were so unusual, and I'd never seen anyone use this barrel type before in Scotch or Irish whiskey. We just said, give us them. We got to try this. And down the rabbit hole we went.
So you're not combining cognac casks and orange liqueur casks, or are they one cask type that had cognac and orange liqueur?
It's one cask type. So effectively, it was a Grand Marnier style spirit had been in these casks previously.
Okay. Well, on that, should we say sláinte and have a little taste?
Yeah. Sláinte, everyone. Cheers.
Right away on the nose, you're getting a huge amount of aroma. And it's very silky. It's very like almost creamy is the wrong word for an aroma, but it has that like thickness to the aroma as well, which is really interesting.
Yeah. So I suppose starting with 101, the malt that went into this whiskey, it was heavily peated, so it was a 55 ppm count on the phenols in the malt. Double goes in through our normal brewing process. We look to collect a bright clear worts, which will give us a bright fruity distillate. Our fermentation time then is 160 to 180 hours to sort of try and dial up a lot of those flavors that you get from extended fermentation. So you get a lot more esterification in the beer, the wash, and that really carries through then on the distillate. And we double distill everything. So it's just great to have that sort of depth of flavor in the new make when we put it into the barrel. And for us with this whiskey, what was interesting, for 5 years, we had two elements. You either had peat or you had orange. You had no integration at all between the two elements. And then as we went into year 6, the whiskey really started to evolve and meld together. And the more we tried it, the more we just fell in love. So for me, the nose is all about sort of that sort of orange blossom and fresh mint, that real floralness, and it has that sort of undertone there of the smoke behind it. Now, when we produce our peanut malt, we like to think we produce what we call is sweet peat. So it's all about those sort of sweet, smoky barbecue flavors, as opposed to those sort of more briny, maritime iodine type notes. And we really think you really get that, first of all, on the nose.
Absolutely. And do you source specific type of peated malt to get that sweet peat, or how do you target that flavor profile?
We've tried peat from a number of different suppliers, and what we've really found is that with how we go through that sort of extended fermentation period, we lose some of the phenols that we don't want, some of those sort of more maritime type notes. They seem to just get sort of mellow out during that sort of extended fermentation. And then when we distill, we're quite specific we've quite a wide cut, but we have a very, very specific cut point that we follow. And that sort of gives us the smoke profile that we want. Biggest difference is we have had more recently some Irish peanut malt, and the main difference would be it's slightly sweeter. It's a slightly sweeter smoke. But I always think there's a lot more factors at play rather than just the source of the peanut malt or where the peat's from. It's how we actually use that peat to create the flavors that we want to create in the final whiskey. Well, I'm seeing lots of comments in here already. Marissa saying it's well-balanced smoke with an orange syrup sweetness. Lovely and well-balanced. Martin Purcell saying how long the finish was. Lovely dram, great combination of sweetness and smoke. It's clearly resonating. Tina says not into peated whiskey, but fell in love with them the first time tasted it at Cork Whiskey Fest. She continues saying sweet makes peat okay, and the sweetness there is so unique. And then Whiskey Pep coming in saying, echoing Tina saying not mad about peated whiskey, but coats your mouth so well. Creamy dark chocolate orange mix. So clearly resonating quite well with the people that are trying it. So the sweet and the peat is clearly a winning combination. Yeah, like when I taste this, I get all that sort of slightly honeyed and sweet malt up front, but initially it's that milk chocolate, and then the orange blossom comes back in. I always get a nice touch of mint coming through, which, as far as I know, is coming from the European oak from the cask. And then you just get that smoke is slowly building, but it's a nice layers of sweet smoke. It's never pulling you down into that sort of more iodine type environment. And to me, it's what I love about this whiskey. It was an opportunity to do something that's totally unique, to use casks that no one had done before. And it's, you know, as a distiller, to produce something that's truly unique on the marketplace is kind of cool. We've had a lot of fun with this.
I would imagine so. When you're saying obviously you do a lot of work, like you're talking about the double distillation, the longer fermentation times, trying to find and tweak those peat flavors you're looking for. From a distiller point of view, have you played with those settings or tried triple distillation, or just tweaking one parameter to see how they change, or did you find a recipe setup you liked and you've stuck to it since then?
I suppose of dealing with double versus triple, we originally, when we set up, I was the only operator, so I had to distill gin, mash in for whiskey, distill whiskey, cask, everything myself. So part of our process initially was set up about, as a craft producer, it's about how many people we had, and when it's just one person, you're kind of mindful of what you can do. But I suppose over time we've evolved that. We have done triple distillation in the last sort of 2 or 3 years. We like it, but we don't find it's any better or any worse from what we already produce.
Okay, yeah.
So our new make is quite, while it's quite rich, it's also quite elegant as well. If you'll notice, if anyone gets the chance to visit our distillery, all of our line arms ascend upwards, so that helps dial up a degree of floralness and sweetness in the spirit. Fermentation has probably been the biggest area that we've played about with, and now that we're well and truly settled into sort of 6-7 day, fermentation time, we definitely see across all of our new make mature whiskey a certain velvety texture. It's really hard to describe. It's not so much a flavor note, but it's more a mouthfeel and weight and character that's there. And we really think that comes across now in all of the new make spirits and now also in our maturing whiskies as well.
I think they're seeing the positive responses from people there as well is showing that whatever you're doing is well liked. It's funny. Yeah, exactly. Well, it's funny for me because with distilleries, there's so many things like you said at the beginning that you're the only operator in the distillery, that there's a necessity that goes into some of the decisions you make. But then other times, people do it because they want to do it this way over that way. But then on the flip side, I know of a distillery that casks all of its whiskey at 63% alcohol, which is close to where most people would cask their whiskey at anyway. But I know that they wanted to cask it at 63.5. And the reason that they don't is because the very first cask they filled, they added too much water and they missed the 0.5. And the distillery has cast at 63 for all of these years later, just because the very first cast they missed the 0.5. So, there's decisions come for lots of different reasons in distilleries, but clearly these decisions you guys are making is making good whiskey. Can you tell us a little bit about the rye whiskey you're making? Because obviously not many people in Ireland are, lots of people making pot still, lots of people making malt, but not too many people going out there and making rye.
Yeah, I suppose our rye whiskey journey began back in 2017. And I suppose going back to the very start of our distillery journey, we've done most of our research in the US because there was just no reference point back in 2012 for what a craft distillery was in Ireland or in the UK. And in 2017, we were in Maryland in the US, which of course is the home of American rye whiskey. And I really, first of all, fell in love with rye whiskey. But two, really loved the sort of the Irish, Scotch-Irish influence on rye whiskey, and that sort of immigrant culture in America where you had the Germans and Dutch bringing the heritage of brewing with rye, and then the Irish and Scots basically distilling anything we could make a beer from. And at the time as well here locally, we had the Guinness rye pale ale on the market, and I became a bit obsessive, I'll be honest with you, with rye. So we had to find a way of making rye that would work for us. So we don't use raw rye, we use malted rye. And the benefit of that is actually it gives you a lot of that rye spice, but you also get a lot more fruit flavors coming through on the distillate. In fact, a lot more fruit flavors than what you would get with malted barley. So for our rye whiskey, it's roughly between 30 and 50% malted rye, and the balance is malted barley. And the expressions that we have at the minute are both, although they're non-age statement on the label, they're both aged for a minimum of 5 years, but they're aged in both bourbon and also virgin chinkapin oak. And that chinkapin oak is a very special type of wood. Chinkapin gives you notes of sort of sweet almonds and almost like a very sherry light influence on the whiskey. And that comes down to the acorn of the chinkapin oak actually tasting like sweet almonds. So when we started to put that particular expression together, we just fell in love with what rye could do. And we, if I'm honest, we knew from the moment we distilled the distillate, it was just fantastic. We knew it was going to be a good whiskey. And so I suppose the rye is on a journey along with our other whiskeys where we'll look over the next sort of 9 months that will become a 7-year-old expression, possibly with a little bit of a tweak or two in its makeup. But it's something that we love making, and we're going to continue making rye whiskey at Rademon.
Well, I think people are only going to be more and more excited to see it come out. This expression, though, we are tasting this evening, the 7-year-old peated single malt, 46% ABV. What is the RRP, and where would people be able to find it?
This will retail between 70 and 75 euros. It's available across Ireland, the UK, Germany, and the US as well.
Fair enough. I see Whiskey Pep has a question for you. He says, before you decided to set up distillery, did you have background in distilling, or did you jump in and find your way?
Well, truthfully, my background is in the defense industry, building missiles and laser systems. So definitely wasn't a distiller. So we very much jumped in and found our way.
I mean, I'm going to say, right, I often joke that the people who set up distilleries in Ireland, it always seems to be a common, or at least recently seems to be a common story, that people seem to have these paper packaging empires. And I always joke about everyone seems to have had a packaging business before coming to whiskey. But defense, lasers, and missiles is definitely not one that I was expecting.
It's definitely a little bit different.
Well, absolutely fantastic. Well, David, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it. I know everyone watching has definitely appreciated trying this whiskey this evening. I just want to say thank you very much. Is there anything that you haven't told us about this whiskey that you'd like us to know before you go?
Look, it's just from us. We feel it's a really special dram that we've really treasured putting together. It has a lot of our signature prints on it, and we're just delighted to be able to get it out to as many people as possible. And we'd just like to thank yourself and the team at Irish Malts for helping us get our whiskey out there and for allowing us to share our journey with you guys all tonight. So thanks very much, Matt.
I appreciate it as always. Well, thank you so much, David, and thank you for bringing us a fantastic whiskey. We are moving on to our third whiskey of this evening. We've been talking about innovation and different grains and the complexities and experimentation that goes in distilleries. And I don't think there could be a better follow-up than introducing Peter Mulryan, the co-founder of Blackwater Irish Whiskey Distillery, and in the world of whiskey innovation and experimentation. So, Peter, welcome to the show. Yeah, we're gonna do the Zoom thing. You're on mute there, Peter.
Can you all hear me now?
Yeah, there you go. Welcome to the show.
Thank you very much. Good to be here.
Well, Peter, from the people out there that may know you from whiskey, from distilling, from writing books, from I believe you're in TV before that as well. Definitely different to missiles and lasers, but no less experimental in the world of Irish whiskey than Blackwater Distillery. So I'm thrilled to have you on the show.
Thank you very much. It's good to be here with our new whiskey, which goes on release this weekend. So this is one of its first proper outings.
Fantastic. Well, this is the Blackwater Full Irish. This is Ivor Tree. Oh, yeah, I missed
the Full Irish. And as you can see, we supplied extensive tasting notes.
But it kept us guessing. So this is going to be now the first look. No one's even allowed to cheat.
Well, I'll tell you what, this is kind of sort of deliberate. I mean, my background is, I used to work in television, and I've written lots of books on whiskey, and I've probably written more tasting notes than the average human being. And at this stage, I'm getting a bit tired of them. I think they served a purpose of the past. I think the problem now is, like many things in whiskey, is it gets infected by the marketing department, and often, if marketing leads, if marketing says your whiskey has to taste of whatever, it's put in the tasting notes. Whether it's there or not is beside the point. It's kind of it's the marketing speak, and then people on the internet or people whatever looking for clicks will just repeat all this. They just repeat the news brief. They don't think themselves, and so something the marketing department has said is true. It ends up in a tasting note, ends up on YouTube, and everyone believes it, even though it's probably bollocks in the first place. So as a company, we tend to avoid tasting notes. We do what we call signposts. If you buy a bottle of Blackwater, you'll see there's maybe 5 or 6 words on the label. They're signposts. They're there to help you. They're just there to point you in the right direction, because everyone tastes things differently anyway. And what I perceive as dark chocolate, you may not perceive as dark chocolate or light chocolate. So we just we'll steer around that. But why don't you sniff it? Because what we might do together is put together sort of tasting notes for this whiskey, and you can kind of see what I mean. The first thing I'd say is the nose of the 3 you've had tonight. This nose is the most closed. It's the most recessive. Why is that? Well, several reasons. The most important one being it's the strongest. It's 48.5. Actually, it's nearer 49, if I'm being honest with you. So it's going to be more closed. If you add a bit of water to this, it does open up, and you swirl it around, and you give it some air, and you give it some time in your glass. The nose will blossom, and it will change. So instantly, if I just tell you the ABV is 49% or 48.5, you kind of for yourself go, okay, yeah, that's why the nose is closed. But when the nose opens up, what do you get then? Lots of stuff going on.
There certainly is. I also have some in my hands. I'm just trying to give it a aroma.
Yeah,
This
that's
glass
a really good thing. That's a really good tip. See what Matt's doing.
Yeah.
Put them on your hands. You rub it and you smell it. But again, what's happening is you're turning the alcohol into vapor. It's going away, and instead it's leaving behind on your skin the smell of the oils, be it the oils from the grains or the oil from the wood. So that's a really good trick, Matt. Thank you for that.
No, it's good. This glass isn't giving me anything, so I was trying to figure it out.
It's very closed.
Yeah.
You add water. There's a bit of sweetness when it does warm up, and a kind of a biscuity note. I think is interesting. And that
I was just going to say digestive is what I'm getting.
Yeah.
It's grain. Yeah. It's grain. It's almost like desiccated milled grain, and that tiny bit of sweetness in the background.
Yeah, and a little bit I would call what milk duds. They're kind of like those chewy teeth. They're sweet teeth. Yeah, and that's because the finishing cask in this is stout. It's a stout cask, so you're going to get a bit of sweetness. You're going to get a kind of that bit of that yeastiness that you get from a stout, and that's predominantly there. Why the nose is also confusing is because it's different. This is the most different Irish whiskey you're ever going to have. It contains all 6 permissible grains. So that's malted barley, wheat, oat, rye, and maize or corn. So it contains all 6. I can't think of any other whiskey that contains all 6. So therefore, it's going to wreck your head slightly because it's not what you might expect it isn't as obvious. You've got to dig a little bit harder on this one, which brings me back to what is this? Well, this is a blend. It's a blended whiskey. So far, we've released a single malt, a pot still, a rye, and now a blend. And the idea of the blend was simply to flip things on their head. Blended Irish whiskey, it's the biggest category is blended Irish whiskey, but most blends would be 90% grain, 10% single malt, or something in that region. What we did here is we turned it around. It's 10% grain and it's 90% other whiskies. And that other whiskey breaks down into half is single malt, half is pot still. And the single malt and the pot still are made by Blackwater. They're 6 years old. And the grain, which is at 10%, is a 7-year-old grain from Great Northern. And we married them together and we sat them in a cask for a year. Now, it's a bit long. 6 or 7 months would have done, but we left them for a year, and this is what we ended up with. So it's a bit of an experiment, and we wanted to have something that was a core product. So it's our first core. So this will be available. The full Irish will be available as of this weekend in 4 territories. It's Ireland, UK, Netherlands, and Germany. And we stick with 4 for the moment because we're not very big, and we can supply those markets. We can support those markets. And at the moment, America is not right for us. We're just too small.
That makes sense. Before we jump into the glass straight away, I do want to ask, when you're making decisions from a distillery point of view, and you married those whiskies and laid it down in the finishing cask, other distilleries would finish the malt independently and the pot still independently, and then usually blend it with this bourbon grain. Why choose? I'm not saying one's better than the other. I just love to know the thought process that goes into putting that all into the cask.
It's because when you ever make a stew or a casserole, you leave it in the fridge overnight, and the next day you come back and it is improved. That's because all the flavors have had a chance to set. So what we noticed is that when we put together a blend, if we just let the blend sit as its own thing and give it time, it kind of all works, it all melds, it becomes a lot softer. And that's it. So we blended everything together, stuck it back and stuck it into the stout casks, and it was an imperial stout from Hopfully Brewing, which is a craft brewery in Waterford. Left it for just over a year. We did come back to it. We did taste it as it went, and after about 7 months, it was kind of there. But we just left it a bit longer because we had to get bottles and labels and all that kind of stuff. But that's why we did it. We just kind of felt the flavors married better by leaving them in wood rather than just sticking them in stainless steel.
Very good. Well, on that, I'll say Sláinte. I'm dying to jump into this. So thank you. There's so much going on in that palate, and there's a big, almost in the middle of it. There's so much different flavors going on, but the middle it almost cleared, and I just got like a liquefied Werther's Original, that kind of butterscotch, and then the grains all came back. It was a very unique experience. I like that.
Yeah, I mean, I think the category of blend needs a bit of love. Single malt gets a lot of press, as did pot still, but if you think about painting with colors, if you have a blend, you're combining a party in the mouth. Yeah, I was at that party. It was really good. You combine different flavors and colors. There are certain flavors and colors that a pot still will bring that a malt won't have. And likewise, there are certain flavors that 7-year-old grain will bring that you're not going to find in a pot still. So the big challenge for us was blending those 3 elements so that they worked. They weren't kind of out of kilter with each other. So basically, John, our head distiller, Sylvia, our distiller, and myself were the 3 people who sat down, and we spent about a week trying different combinations until we got one that was right. Because as you say, when we put it in the cask, we had to be happy. We had to kind of anticipate how it would taste in a year's time, because
Yeah.
we weren't going to fiddle with it again. So that's what we did. So yeah, and gladly we think it worked, but obviously we let the people out there be the judge of that.
Exactly. So you said the first core range whiskey now from Blackwater.
It's our first core. That's right. So it's €55, which I think is pretty good value, considering 90% of it's our own whiskey. Our single casks are around €95 to €100 each. So this is quite a shift in price for something that's 90% ours. As I said, the other 10% is 7-year-old. So it's not a shabby grain. I mean, Great Northern makes some stunning grain whiskies.
They certainly do.
Yeah, they really do. It's just banging stuff. And we bought this grain a long time ago, let it sit, and then, as I say, let it marry with the other whiskies to produce the full Irish. And that's why it's called the full Irish, because it contains all 6 grains, all 3 styles of Irish whiskey, and is finished in a stout cask. So really, you can't get any more Irish.
Exactly.
It's not possible, really.
Martin Purcell saying that he's found some stout finishes that don't work, but this one does, and he thinks it's very nice. And then Whiskey Pep saying nutty sweet stout comes through, spices had to pour from, big glass, the small one is gone.
Yeah. And if you let it sit for 10 minutes, quarter of an hour, it'll change in the glass, particularly if it lasts like a tulip. What'll happen is it'll just come into itself. Again, it needs a bit of air, it needs a bit of water. Even at sort of 49%, it'll start soaking. It'll start pulling water in from the surrounding air, just enough for it to find its legs. It's got really nice chunky legs, as John would say, our distiller. The DNA of the whiskey we make it's double distilled, and it's quite oily because our stills aren't very big, and we use a lot of oat in our whiskies, and oat is quite oily too. So between the oat content, and this is about 20%, the double distillation and small stills and a long fermentation time, that's kind of what the party in your mouth is, I have to say.
Well, I think it is clearly doing good things in the glass and on the palate. If people wanted to come visit you guys, is there ability to visit?
Yeah, come and see us. We're open every day of the week. Not the weekends. We're small. We close weekends. People get the weekend off. But Monday to Friday, just come and see us. Send us an email. Give me a ring. Just come along and say hello. If you're in the building, you may be asked to do something.
Pick up a bag of grain.
Have a bag of grain. Make me a cup of coffee. Yeah, it's a bit hands-on, which is what people like. We're not very big, as I say, but we're a friendly bunch, and we're in the West Waterford. So yeah, we're kind of on the Cork Waterford border.
Okay. Well, I think people out there are going to be very pleased by this. Whiskey Pep says he got a bottle of it at Bloom after tasting it. Yeah,
we bottled it the week before Bloom. So we brought some to Bloom, which is a big sort of garden festival in Dublin. And we had some under the counter. We hadn't it all bottled. It's not now all bottled. It isn't in the Netherlands or Germany yet. It's about to ship. It is in Irish Malts as of this week. It's in Celtic Whiskey of this week, Foxes in Dublin. It's on our own e-store website, and we will send all over Europe. And it is going to Germany. Give it another few weeks just to get there.
Well, perfect. If there's anything that you haven't mentioned about the distillery or about this whiskey you want to leave people with, is there anything?
No, just enjoy it, folks. As I say, it's a core range, so this will be available on an ongoing basis. It'll probably shift a little bit in style because the batches we make aren't very big, and because you're dealing with an organic product here, which will change because we don't have vast vats of the stuff. It's made in batches of a couple of thousand bottles. So, it will shift over time, but it'll be a managed change as opposed to a haphazard change. And between now and Christmas, we have a few more single cask releases to come, including a 200-year-old mash bill, first made in 1824. Hasn't been made for 200 years. So we're bringing it back later this year, as well as Peat the Magic Dragon, which is our peated malt. It's back. This is PMD2, Return of the Dragon, and it'll be out later in the year. Fantastic. Well, I think people will definitely be excited about both of those.
I don't want you to give away the whole game, but is there any grain specifically of the 200-year mash bill that you're excited about people?
Oh, it's an oat fest. It is a stonking oat fest. It comes from Clashmore Distillery. Clashmore was the whiskey distillery in Waterford that closed in around 1840, just before the famine. We were the next distillery to set up in Waterford. So that gives you an idea of how long the gap was. We age it exclusively in fortified wine casks because there were no bourbon casks. So back then they didn't exist. So it's in your face. Not everyone's going to like it. It's a bit of a shock to the modern palate, but it is how whiskeys were 200 years ago. Mm-hmm. So we hope you like it. If you don't, it's fine. Buy something else.
Well, there you go. Tina wants to drop and say, I love the things Blackwater are doing, and the place, the distillery is so cool.
Thank you. Come and see us if you haven't been, and we always have coffee on, so just come in and have a coffee.
Well, fantastic. Well, Peter, thank you so much for your time. I want to say a big thank you to everyone watching live, and of course, all of the people that watch back after the fact with us as well. It is always great to hear about the whiskies you've enjoyed along with us. And then, of course, a very big thank you to our guests this evening, Glen, David, Boyd, Armstrong, and of course, Peter, yourself. A very big thank you to you. And then, of course, the team at Irish Malts that make this all happen. But Peter, once again, thank you so much for your time. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, Matt. Take care of yourself. See you soon.
Bye-bye.